Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I am your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Heyo.
So today, we are going to be talking about the Sandman. More specifically, Sandman Episode 8, Playing House. So, before we get into this one here, we got to give out those reminders. Got to get at us on the socials here.
Social.
So you can do that by...
Get a sticker.
Yeah, you can get a sticker if you contact us.
To you.
You can do that by sending us an email at fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. Or you can get at us on Instagram, which is fantasyrewindpod, or at fantasyrewindpod. Or you can do so at Twitter, at fantasyrewind. If you write into the show, whatever, we'll send you guys stickers. If you want one, just let us know. We'll ship them out free of charge. All right.
Yes. Or just send us, even if you do like a rating and review, just send us a screenshot of that so we know who who did it. And we will definitely get like, hey, yeah, we'll send you one. That would be so helpful, especially on Apple Podcasts, because I know everyone asks for those. So I guess that's important, right?
Could be. Who knows? So like I said,
right, let's jump on in here.
I
just want to get going.
Getting into the content
yes.
here. We gotta get this back on track. This is getting off the rails quick.
Yes, I know. All right, episode 8. Morpheus greets Rose. Jed is with Gott. That's our first realization here. And Morpheus tells Rose that the dream vortex is incomprehensible, but Rose can travel through others' dreams. Which is a big point in this episode because we see Rose traveling through people's dreams, which is probably my favorite part in the episode.
Definitely a cool portion, yeah.
It then flips to Jed, or Gott, in this like kind of retro-y, like TVs everywhere, and it's like a really cool scene. Yeah, control panel. And she transforms into...
Jed's mother.
Rose and Jed's mom. And she's basically running this system where Jed's a superhero. He's the Sandman. Now, this is similar to the comics in that in the comics, Jed does have...
Sandman adventures.
He escapes, and he is cut off from the dreaming, and he is having these Sandman adventures. But what's different there is in the comics...
He's with some different people.
Yes. And so do you have those names of those people?
I think we know their names because they show up in a different way in the show here. So we could have a certain dead husband and a mourning wife being represented as superheroes along with Jed.
Correct. And so this is where I was talking about Lita was sort of... taking other characters' sort of roles a little bit. She took the mom's role, right? And then she still has her own role in the sense that she's with her dead husband, but not in the same way that she was in the comic.
Right.
In the comic, her and her husband are in Jed's dreams, and they are the superheroes that fight these rogues gallery for Jed, so to speak.
And so this part here in the comics is very trippy because to me it's like very campy superhero, like old school stuff, and I wasn't the biggest fan of this part in the comics, to be honest. I was like, oh, it's kind of weird.
It is a very difficult and a very complicated thing to follow, actually. So that's why I said last episode where the changes they made have made this a lot more accessible and a lot more... I think it was a very good change.
Agreed.
Because it allowed you to understand Rose's power better as the Vortex, being able to walk through dreams and her impact on other people. It cleared up Jed's dream situation, and it gave Gott, I felt like a very good...
It was a very Gott-friendly episode, let's just say that.
Yes, it was. I loved what they did with her.
And, well, what I want to say as well is, Gott in the comics is very different as well as what you get in the show. In the show, it's just Gott, They're shapeshifter, taking on the role of Jed's mom, giving him the love and support he's not getting in the waking world, and almost acting as, a protector. And we'll talk about Gott's argument for change later on here. But contrasting that with what we see in the comics here, we see a very different duo of nightmares coming after Jed here, where there are two nightmares that are kind of taking Jed away from the dreaming and into his own little dream bubble area here. And they don't necessarily seem to be the most benevolent of creatures.
Correct. They have some pretty big aspirations with Jed, basically. They want to create their own dreaming of sorts, if I remember correctly. And so it is very different. Again, I think they cleaned it up really well. And I think, yes, it was better. And we'll talk more about Gott and some of the changes and why I like what they did with her more towards the end of the episode.
Yeah.
But we'll keep going on. Basically, Jed he seems to be having fun in his dream, right? It is very fun, kind of upbeat, and then he goes out into his old neighborhood in Florida, which you see later on, and there's just bikes everywhere. He's like, I gotta find the children. I'm gonna save them, and he basically goes and he gets attacked by a bunch of rats, and that kind of reflects what happened because he's sleeping in the basement and he got attacked by a rat, which was a little weird, but I think it was more for the connection there.
Right.
And it really shows you the terrible conditions Jed is dealing with those terrible people, those awful people.
And as bad as they are in the show, they're even worse in the comics. Like, the rat bites Jed's hand, okay, that's, not pleasant, but not going to be the worst. But then it also bites his face and starts eating his face in the comics, and not a good situation. Definitely not where you want to be if you were a kid.
Yeah, and you find out later their reasoning. Well, it's in the comics, it's both of them doing it. In the show, it's really Uncle Barnaby, whereas the wife is complicit. Even though she doesn't want to be, she is complicit to the behavior because she's worried about what will happen to her too.
Right.
But they're doing it for the money, for $800 a month. So we have Rose. She kind of awakes to Matthew because she now knows that he will be following her and keeping tabs with her. We then see her calling and talking with Unity because she's making flyers to go find Jed. And Unity is talking to our favorite collector,
the Corinthian.
The Corinthian. And he now knows where Rose is. I don't know how he's traveling so fast.
That's what I was going to bring up, actually. So I was like, I have no idea how the Corinthian just teleports.
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, we kind of start seeing too the effects of Rose's vortex powers in full effect in Lita's life.
Right.
And we're seeing the intoxication of dreams for Lita, right? Because it started with her just having a conversation with her husband on the plane. Now she's waking up with him and having some, banana pancakes and a little bit of little love making on the side there.
Ghost
and
sex.
He's built them this house, their dream house in the dreams, and she knows it's a dream, he knows it's a dream, but maybe we can make this crazy thing happen for us. Maybe we can have the life we wanted.
Because if it was a dream, how does he remember everything? How does he continue to do things when she's awake? And it's making her question reality, is what it's making her do.
It is. Correct. And at first it's not really that big of a deal. She's just like, oh, this is just fun, whatever. And by the end of this episode, we start to see the ramifications. It does start drawing her in and having ramifications, right? All right, so then we go back to the dreaming. Morpheus is wondering how Rose wandered into his own realm. And he's like, I'm not... he's not okay with not knowing these things.
Right.
He wants to have complete control. And this shows, I think, that we've had some change with him, right? In the first 5 episodes, we've had some change with him. But when it comes to the dreaming and his job, he is very much like, I am the person who provides for this realm. I make the rules, I run it, right? And we kind of got that a little bit last episode where he's like, whose fault is it then? It's my fault. The dreaming is on me.
Right.
And Lucien's trying to say, like, hey, no, it isn't just you. And I think this is great because, you know, even though he changed a bit in the first one in his regards to how he viewed humanity, in this episode, or in this arc, we're seeing, like, how he views the dreaming and the inhabitants there.
Right, and that has not changed, like you just said.
Then we keep going on here. We have some scenes more with Jed and realizing the money situation there. We have Corinthian, he finally finds Rose Walker, but then he sees that she's talking to
Matthew, and he's like, oh, let me get out of here.
He's like, oh, crap. Turns around, makes a connection with Hale. We think we know his type, right? But he's very much trying to stick around, but now he realizes that, oh, they're looking for this kid Jed. So I can get to Rose if I get this kid Jed and get Morpheus out of the picture. Because he's trying to get Rose since he can use her to, you know, further his goals and ambitions, which is to get rid of Dream and continue to eat all the eyeballs he wants.
Oh, speaking of that, really quick, I want to interrupt this conversation to talk about Corinthian eating the eyeballs. How disturbing was that scene? He's like just popping them like a grape into his mouth and just like,
oh yeah,
like
when he does, he gets to see everything they saw.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah,
okay,
which is why we'll get to it later on here. But so we have an awkward meeting with the foster lady, with the parents, and you're just like sitting there the entire time. Yeah, Jed, get that note in there. Get that note in there. You're like, yeah, he got it in there. Yes, yes, yes. And then, you know, he gets called in later. Like, we have to have a conversation about how well you got this into her bag. It's like, oh, no, Jed, no.
Felt so bad for him. And that's actually not how I thought it was going to happen. What I thought was going to happen is I thought that the foster lady was going to find the note, and then Corinthian was going to pay her a visit. So I was half right on that part there. But
yeah, because the Corinthian, she gets back to her office, and Corinthian does find her. And, you know, when she probably says, oh, I can't talk to you about this stuff, he's just like, well, you don't have to say anything. I'll just see what you saw.
Yeah. Like, oh, I can find that place, no problem. Plop, plop.
Kills her and eats her eyes, and, yep. Then he's off after that to go visit Jed's foster parents a visit, which, as sad as it is, I mean...
kind of happy he went and visited them.
Yeah, a little bit. They deserved it.
They definitely deserved it.
At least the husband definitely deserved it.
Yes, they did. Or he did.
Anyway,
yes.
Rose wakes up, though. This is where we get into some of my favorite scenes here, because in the comics, I really thought this was very trippy and wild, and it made a little more sense here in the show for me. Rose wakes up into Hal's, or Dolly's, dream, and is kind of opening doors and going into other people's dreams, which that dream was...
That was a funky dream.
It was a funky dream. I think I understood his dream a little bit better in the comics because there was a little more narration to it and everything else. In this one, like, I was like, it wasn't quite as descriptive, because I think in the comic there was like little narration bubbles of like kind of what the character was thinking as they were dreaming those dreams.
So I don't remember necessarily all the details because like this one wasn't as clear, again, because it's a little trippy section in the comics area there.
Yeah.
But as far as the portrayal on the screen that we saw here, with Hale dressed as Dolly, ripping his face off, being like, this is not your face. And he's talking to himself.
Yeah.
And then it's Hale's face there, and Hale's like, that's not your face either. Rip. In the other hand, he's like, they're like muscly flesh, like pretty gruesome. And be like, I need another hand because I don't have any more. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that went from a dream to a nightmare very quickly.
Correct. And I think it kind of relates to what he was saying before.
Right. Talking with...
I thought that scene with him and Rose where he was like, if Hollywood called right now, I would sell this house and I would go back right there. Like, following your dream is super important. And I think in that nightmare, and I just hate saying it because I don't have it right in front of me, and I had some thoughts about it when I read it before, but it was kind of like a metaphor for him, like, either not feeling comfortable in his own body, not knowing who he was, or it was that, like, he felt like he was wasting away and not going to reach his potential. But either way, we can keep moving on from there. She goes from Hal's Dolly dream into Lita's dream, where she is having some lovemaking with her husband.
Her dead husband.
And now they're no longer in, like, where she was, but now they're in the dream house. Notice this progression with them. Like, he was stuck to her, like, waking world location at first, and then, you know, he led her a little bit deeper into the dream, and now that when she goes to see him, she's in the dream. Like, in the dreaming, like in this place that he created. Yeah. And not in, like, the set location that she was. And so it's showing her gradual, like, going
like
deeper
and
deeper
the dream
into
more
this.
and more.
Mm-hmm. And we'll see more of that in a little bit here. We then go into Chantel's dream, where she's reading a book that's going into the Library of Congress. Ken's dream, which is a little weird. Barbie. Yeah, it's more of a nightmare. Yeah, he's naked and Barbie's locked in the car. In the comics, there was like some adultery things and things like that, I believe, with him. Yeah. Like, we'll see what happens with that, though. I had put here, though, because we see Dream in that scene, like, show up and be like, you have to lead the way. Mm-hmm. And it shows that Dream is really a background character here, and, like, it's all on Rose to kind of... She is the protagonist. She is the main character here. She is deciding what happens. Then we go into Barbie's dream, and yes, this was my favorite. We got to see Martin Tenbones. Oh, man, so good to see him. We saw him in episode 1 with Barbie on his back. So, nice little callback to episode 1 on the intro into the dreaming.
So I don't remember seeing that, so I'm going to have to go back now that I know what to look for and actually check it out there. But I thought that Barbie's dream was very interesting. I was like, okay, so is this what the Barbie issue is about? And so apparently I'm not too far off base judging by the face you're making.
Yeah. As I said, like, I really liked that arc, and again, I've read a few different things where it's like, this is a weak arc and it's whatever, but I always thought it was super interesting. Like, but well, if they don't make it, I will definitely reread it and then send it to you, and we could talk about that issue by itself because I would love to have a conversation with someone about it. Now, and it, like, there's legit parts of that comic that are, like, creepy, and I may or may not have had a nightmare about it at one point in my adult life. Anyway, so let's see here. She goes into Zelda's dream, and then she ends up into I thought this was a good line, because they were talking about Zelda a little bit, and they mentioned how people seek home when they dream, and I thought this was such a great way to wrap everything we had seen so far in those dreams. Even like when we go back to
Hell, he's on the stage, he's there performing.
Yes, on the stage. Barbie, like, this was her, like, I don't want to say any more about that, but
whole world.
Not quite that. Zelda, like, wanting to, like, find a place where she belongs
in the graveyard.
Jed even, like, his dreams, like, you know, this was his safe space. And a lot of times when we think about dreams, like, they can be so great, right? A lot of people love to go to sleep or enjoy that because their dreams can
adventure.
Be comforting. Yeah, adventurous and comforting. And yeah, that was a line that clicked for her, though, and she's like, I got to go back to the house in Florida. Call back to what happened earlier in the episode. Now, this is where we get a little... I guess Dream seems very heartless with God.
Definitely.
Right? Because God genuinely wants to help Jed.
Well, hold on. Let's talk about what happens here. How Dream gets them.
Yes. Why don't you take it here?
Well, so you see, like, basically a battle almost between Dream and Jed. Except Dream's not having any of it. He's like, you know what? We're here. We found you. And I actually don't care that you're here. Like, yeah, Rose can have you. I don't care. I'm here for the nightmare. And so he goes and he takes the nightmare and basically shows them who is the true master of the dreaming here.
Yeah. He, she's like, oh, don't go in there, and he's like, I got this, you're worried. And he goes to face him like, I'm the Sandman. And he's like, oh, this is cute.
It's like, oh boy, you're the Sandman, huh?
Yeah. And you have to think about what this looks like to dream. One, this is a nightmare that's taken this boy out of the dreaming.
Stolen one of his subjects.
Mm-hmm. And, well, one of his subjects stole, somebody who, they're supposed to, like, service and nurture, right? And so even though she comes up and she's like, oh, I'm trying to nurture him, like, you have to kind of see from Dream's perspective a little bit like, no, you are a nightmare. Your job is to terrify people, and you've had this kid cut off from the dreaming for how long? Like, no, you got to get out of here. You've done a lot of bad. It's kind of probably what he's looking at. One, you defied me, too.
Right.
Obviously, on top of it. But, so when you think about it that way, like, his response does seem a little more justified. It does seem overall, because we've seen Gott's perspective and how she's acted with Jed. We are like, no, like, she's, like, trying to make this kind of fun for him, and I think this is great. We then have Corinthian finding Jed and taking him, which, by the way, there's another part we're going to get to, but I want to just get this out of the way. Like, when they're driving away, like, I was like, that's such a great scene. Yeah. Like, the music, everything, the big bad wolf.
Yeah, thought it was good.
That's
thought
great.
It was really good.
But we have Dream with Gott and Lucian are in the dreaming again in his castle, or his whatever you want to call it. And Gott talks about how she wished to change, and she didn't want to be a nightmare anymore, and that what she was trying to do was to provide the nurturing that boy did not have in the waking world. And Dream was not listening to this.
That, no.
Correct. He is like, we cannot change. We are who we are.
We have a duty to go and do what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. He is uncomfortable with the idea of his creation changing, because that would have the implication that he has the ability to change. And I think to him, that's terrifying.
What was interesting to me, though, about this is that you've already seen Dream acknowledge his own changing, though. You've seen him acknowledge the change with the Wandering Jew, where he wasn't able to, like, call him a friend at first and thought it was so ridiculous that this mere mortal thought they were friends, but then over a century later he's able to admit, okay, you know what, I'm here to see a friend, and acknowledge that the mortal was right, and you know what, maybe it's not so bad for an endless to have a friendship with a mortal person, especially now since he's immortal. But
so his relationship with humans has changed.
Yeah.
But that would, like, what he's looking at now is, I created you to be a certain way. You can't change. Like, I think there's something more fundamental about that. Like me as a being, like, what? I'm trying
unless
to think about
Dream looked at it in that what they were implying was that Dream was flawed, and that what Dream did wasn't perfect. That maybe Dream made you to be a nightmare, but maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you don't want to listen to Dream and follow your purpose. And maybe you want a different purpose. But what I thought was very important in this scene was Lucian talking about how I didn't used to be your librarian. I changed. I evolved. And you were receptive to that. You were willing to hear that. And then when it comes time for Galt, for Galt to change, it's like, no, that's not okay. And so Morpheus, I think, probably took it almost like as an affront to him, not necessarily
like, you can't accept what I gave you in life. Like, I created you to do this job, and you're not doing it. So I agree, that makes a little bit more sense there. Like, you're not fulfilling the purpose that you were created for. You are flawed, and therefore, like, I kind of made a mistake. I really do think that there is, like, a big tie here, because when we create something, sometimes his ego is in the way. That's what I want to say here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it isn't that he can't change, but he can't accept, like, his ego is not allowing him to think that, like, he can't do his job well enough. Because that would mean, well, one, like, he already blames himself for messing up by leaving the dreaming unattended. And so now it's not just that, but, like maybe I've just been terrible at my job my entire existence.
Maybe I messed up. Maybe I'm not good at this.
Maybe, like, oh my gosh, it just, like, this is the one thing I can control, and right now I can't control it, and I can't acknowledge that. So I think there's some really interesting things to, like, think about as we continue going forward with this. But that's the end of the episode.
We forgot to mention one important thing with Lita.
Oh.
So...
Oh, yes. Yeah. Lita is pregnant. Thank you for bringing this up, because this was the piece I wanted to get to, too, at the end, is we see at the end, like, Rose goes up, I found Jed, and leaves, and Lita can't even leave, like, doesn't even want to leave the room anymore, because now she's pregnant, which occurred in the dreaming, and that's going to be really important, Dylan. Really important.
Oh, God.
All right? A big major plot point that'll come back way later. So.
Yeah, no, I thought that was just sticking with the pregnancy thing there. That was very interesting to me, because what that had me questioning was if Lita is pregnant in the dreaming, or from the dreaming, due to the vortex, then what else could Rose do? Like, could Rose actually make it so that Hale's face was legit ripped off? That Jed is a serious superhero. Like, what are the limits to her actual abilities? And I guess that comes down to what Dream said, is that he doesn't know. He doesn't know if there are any, or what exactly
kind of
she
a nice
can
little
do.
cop out.
So she can pretty much do anything, is what I'm kind of looking at this as.
Anyways, I think, again, same with last episode. This is another great episode that's continuing to build, and I'm looking for a satisfying conclusion in this next episode or the following one, whenever we get that conclusion. So
before we end this here, I just wanted to ask you about where you think or I don't want to ask you where you think the show's going, because I think you already know where the show is going here.
I have some
but I just
ideas.
wanted to ask you, like, what you think about the direction the show is going, as far as, like, with this second arc that we're in right now, with the progression of it. Do you feel like it's a good place for the show to be? What are you kind of hoping for?
Yes, it ties up some storylines that in the book weren't as connected as they are now. And I think that the way they've done it is going to make it more interesting. And like you've said, adding the Corinthian in to more of this has just helped the show. So I enjoy it all. I think it's going to be very satisfying when it's all said and done. I am very excited, because I'm pretty sure they're going to pretty much stick to the whole collectors thing. Pretty true to the source material, which may be uncomfortable for a lot of people.
So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm also a little nervous about it, because I don't know how far it's going to go. But we are at the point now where the Corinthian actually is doing these things we're seeing in the comics, as well as on the screen here. So we're no longer in uncharted territory for him. As far as what happens next here, I have no idea. I'm right there with you guys. If you haven't read The Sandman, I'm watching it. I'm looking forward to it. I have some feelings that this is going to be a very uncomfortable finale for this, and I'm interested to see exactly how much Dream involves himself in the actual human affairs of what may or may not be coming up here with these collectors and their unfortunate victims.
Well, friends, and all you fantasy nerds like us, thank you for sticking around for these episodes and continuing to listen. And please, share the word, share the Fantasy Rewind with all your friends, family, and people who don't like fantasy or like fantasy. Who cares? They can listen to us talk about nothing. I'm rambling now. Anyway, thank you so much. Again, share us some of your thoughts or feelings about the show, things you might want us to talk about. And we'll catch you on the flippity flip.
All right, this is Two Nerds signing off. Goodbye.
Goodbye.